Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Giant season has begun, and it kind of feels like it's already over. And we've been here before. I mean, last season, the Giants lose 40-0 in the home opener, Sunday Night Football to the Dallas Cowboys. We could even go before that, too. I mean, 2021, total dud, home against a below-average Denver Bronco team, quarterbacked by Teddy Bridgewater. And what did the Giants do in 2024? 100th year anniversary. They got the Century Red uniforms, which hopefully we'll never see again. They lose 28-6 to the Minnesota Vikings, led by Sam Darnold. So Sam Darnold goes back to MetLife, his old home with the Jets, and just absolutely lays the smackdown on the New York Giants. And Daniel Jones is really the big story that comes out of this game, more than anything. But it's not just him. But Daniel Jones looks as bad as he's probably ever looked. And look, expectations were not high for me going into the season at all. I did not think that the Giants, I didn't think this was a playoff team. And it was really just more hoping that they could be competitive. And I got to say, I don't think that doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It's just not a good football team. And it's the ways that they lose. I mean, like, this game was never close. There was never a point where you felt like, oh, yeah, the Giants, like, they can win this. Maybe the only time was, I guess, when the Giants got a turnover on defense. And what do they do with that? They turn it into 3 points. That's all it was. And at that point, so the Giants actually did have a lead. So good for them. The Giants actually had a 3-0 lead. So applause to the New York Giants. This year, even if it was barely, they actually were winning the game. So, it's a very dark time for this franchise. There's just no way around it. And look, next week, Commanders-Giants, you lose that game. And the season's over. I mean, the season really already does feel over. And this was why last season, one of the reasons why I was rooting for them to lose games down the stretch. I wanted a draft pick that would net you one of the top quarterbacks. I'm not saying that one of those necessarily would have been the answer, but Daniel Jones simply isn't. And this isn't coming from someone who's like an anti-Daniel Jones person. I think Jones has had some good moments over the years. That said, like, his time here is not much longer as the starting quarterback. Now, there could be a QB change a lot sooner than I think maybe really any of us anticipated, even people who were against Daniel Jones, just because, quite honestly, forgetting about Tommy DeVito, like, let's set that aside, for example, because I know, like, obviously there's always a lot surrounding him, but Drew Lock did not have a good preseason. Like, it's not like Drew Lock is some coveted backup. Like, Tyrod Taylor, for example, is a much better backup than Drew Lock. That's just the way it is. So it's not like getting Lock in there is going to make a huge difference, but Daniel Jones looked that bad today. And this episode is going to be a lot more, obviously I'm going to go into the game, sort of the ins and outs, but this is going to be more of just sort of a discussion, if you will. And please like and subscribe. It would be greatly beneficial for the channel and very much appreciated. But yeah, the Vikings, I don't think that the Vikings are a playoff team. I mean, you'd be fooled by that today, right? Maybe this Viking team actually is good. And look, Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator. Like, they do have weapons offensively. I mean, obviously, we know what Justin Jefferson's capable of. And the offensive line for the Vikings really held up today. I mean, one of the biggest disappointments, and I'm going to jump around a little bit, the defense, the lack of any edge rush pressure was disturbing. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns did absolutely nothing. Like, if that's going to happen, then you're completely screwed. They did nothing because the Giants secondary isn't that good. But what you're hoping for is that there's pressure on the quarterback. Nope, Sam Darnold had a pretty clean pocket all game. On the flip side, one of the few bright spots, the Giants' offensive line, they held up. I'm not sure how it'll all be graded out at the end of the day, but to me, this is more of a Daniel Jones issue. Whereas there have been times in years past when I would more maybe chalk it up at different times, right? And try to be fair about it. Like, hey, Jones, He didn't have much time to do anything. The line was a mess. Honestly, the offensive line wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. Certain individuals maybe had more struggles more than others, a little bit, but really it was they held their own, I felt like. But Jones was just way off target. The play calling was downright bad by Brian Daboll as well. And look, maybe there's reasons more than we know, and Daboll's the play caller. So, me mentioning Mike Kafka is basically irrelevant in this discourse. Like, there's no reason for me to even go there. This is Daboll. And he puts a lot of the blame on himself post game, and a lot of that is just that's what you're supposed to do as the head coach. But at the same time, if you really were to ask him, I'm sure he would take some of the blame, but also dish it out on some of his players. Where do we go? What do I want to discuss next? Dexter Lawrence, a little bit frustrating. Dexter Lawrence after the game, it's the classic, upset with the fans for booing. I'm sorry, Dex. Like, the Giant fans have every right to do so, and they're not booing like you individually. It's the team as a whole, and he knows that. And look, like, it's been a bad time for the Giants. I mean, 2022 was nice, right? But you look at it's now really more than a decade. And it's just been really, really poor football to the point where, like, most of these seasons, like I said, they're over before it starts, except for 2016 and 2022. And if you want to throw in a couple other years where they really, truly did get kind of back in it after a slow start, very few and far between. I kind of think back to, I guess 2015, which was a crazy sort of weird year where the Giants lost a lot of sort of heartbreaking games. They were in the mix for a while that year. But that's just about it. It's really been, and to me, this is headed for another season where they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Now, one of those other teams actually might be in the division, the Commanders. I don't expect the Commanders to be very good either. Like right now, and it's only week one. Giants, Commanders, Carolina Panthers, like that's going to be a bad team. Tennessee Titans probably won't be very good. Look, we thought the Patriots weren't going to be good. We, as in, I guess, the collective consensus out there. But hey, they end up going to Cincinnati and winning a game. So, like, I don't think the Giants will be able to do that. So, as far as some of the personnel stuff, just a little bit weird with the way the Giants go about some things. So, as it is, I believe the active roster isn't even at its capacity. I think the active roster is at 51 or 52 when it should be at 53. And they elevate a couple of practice squatters. Now, one of them actually, it's been up and down so much that I lose track. I think Carter Coughlin was actually elevated from the practice squad. Unfortunately for him, he left the game. There was an injury to him that actually might be pretty serious. So again, that's not a huge deal in the sense of he is a replaceable player, of course, but someone that's been with the Giants for a while now. So wish him well. But yeah, he might be out, possibly season ending. I'm not sure. But anyway, my main point was just weird in terms of, first off, linebacker, where Micah McFadden, who's been dealing with injury, right? And that may be the answer here. He was technically active, but I don't think he played a single snap. And Darius Mawaso ends up actually starting and playing a decent amount. He actually had an interception in this game. So good for him as a rookie, 6th-round rookie, but that was never the intention. I mean, I did mention in the 53 man roster episode from, I guess, a couple weeks ago, I had said that he was probably the next guy up the way it looked, right? With Deontay Johnson out, and sure enough, he ends up being in there. And McFadden, it's got to be a health thing with McFadden. So that was just weird. That just kind of happened out of nowhere. Other things that kind of happened out of nowhere, the secondary, just strange how, we were led to believe that Drew Phillips was going to be the inside, the starting slot corner with, not on the outside. And Cordell Flott would be on the outside. It ends up working where Cordell Flott goes to the inside, which is where Cordell Flott had been most of his career. So it's not like he's not used to that, but that was not what anyone had seen. And Drew Phillips actually caused that forced fumble. But he didn't really play that much. Adoree Jackson was, was on a bit of a pitch count, but he ended up being in there, I think maybe more than anticipated. Yeah, it was Nick McLeod was more, I guess, on the outside, and he was not really particularly good. Tay Banks kind of tried to hold his own versus Justin Jefferson. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great either. So yeah, some of the defensive stuff is just weird. And I understand the gamesmanship, and I understand it's like, hey, like they want to keep these things a secret. Like, hey, if they feel it's going to help them, great. But it's just some of these things just don't even make much sense. Gunnar Olszewski ends up getting hurt in pregame warmups. He had already been. I think it was related to the same thing. I think it was the groin that had been bothering him, I think. And so they really had kind of no back. They had no coverage there, basically, where Darius Slayton, he ends up returning punts. Like, it's a whole mess with that. And he actually almost led to a turnover. But yeah, like it feels like with some of these injuries and stuff, like they don't have themselves covered. Like they don't have, they are risky with that in a way, with the way they go about the roster maneuvers. It's just, yeah, it's strange. Isaiah Simmons gets no snaps, and he was talked up as someone that was going to be part of this defense. That did not happen. And again, he was active. The inactives were Tommy DeVito as the emergency third quarterback, Jake Kubis, Anthony Johnson, the safety, Trey Hawkins, of course, the corner. Kubis, Hawkins, Johnson, and who would the other one have been? Clearly somewhat inconsequential. Probably someone on the defense would be, Boogie Basham. Boogie Basham was the other one. So, yeah. But, yeah, and Jalen Hyatt, he didn't play a whole lot. So, anyway, let's jump into some stats. Then let's kind of get a little bit into the play-by-play. But, yeah, like individually, Daniel Jones, 22 for 42, 186 yards, no TDs, 2 picks, one of them being a pick six, which really a lot of that falls on Dable. But the other pick in the end zone, just a bad play by Daniel Jones. He was as bad as the numbers look. Like, there's no defending Jones. On the ground, only 6 for 15. Like, look, this is someone that, like, is just – we're not going to see much more of Daniel Jones. It just doesn't feel that way. And I was hoping that somehow he was going to kind of – prove the haters wrong and kind of rise up to the occasion, step up, if you will. And it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Again, just nuts. The Giants, I mean, think about this. Like in the playoffs with the Vikings, which to me was really like the peak of Daniel Jones. If you're to really think about a moment in time, the highest that we probably ever felt about Daniel Jones was after that playoff win against the Vikings in 2022. Fast forward now, a little more than a year and a half later, and yeah, this is someone that is very much on the outs, and there's just not a lot of hope. Sam Darnold, 19 for 24, 208, 2 TDs and 1 pick. Looked really good. Looked really comfortable. Darnold, like, unequivocally outplayed Daniel Jones, and that's a very sad thing to say. It really, really is, but it's true. The running game didn't get much going at all. Devin Singletary, 10 carries for 37 yards, a long of 7. Their longest run was a Wan'Dale Robinson 14-yard run. Again, there's not going to be a whole lot to speak of offensively because there wasn't. Aaron Jones, nice quality game for him on the ground for the Vikings in his first game as a Viking, 14 carries, 94 yards with a touchdown. Malik Neighbors, you can see the talent. So Malik Neighbors wearing number 1, that number unretired. Ray Flaherty was the original number 1. And again, those jerseys today, just hideous, just absolutely disgusting. Like, I don't know. Especially because the way they played, right? Maybe my tone would be different if they had won. It's like, oh yeah, like fuck it, wear it again. But they were so bad that it's like just never let's not break those out anymore. But Malik Neighbors, 5 catches for 66 yards, and those are not eye-popping numbers, but like you could tell there's so much talent there. But look, the offense is probably going to hold them back. On the flip side, Justin Jefferson, 4 for 59 with a touchdown and a 44-yard catch. So Jefferson didn't really have to do much, but still made some pretty big contributions. Again, he had that long catch, which was the longest catch of the day, and then he had that touchdown, which I believe was on a 4th down play. So, he comes up big there. You're going to see a lot of Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 for 44 on 12 targets. So he is going to be a pretty big part of this offense. I like Wan'Dale Robinson, like good player. I think they're going to use him in a way that, kind of maybe trying to move the chains and not too many, a lot of things where he's getting the ball near the line of scrimmage, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish that they would try to throw it down the field. Again, that didn't happen today. There might have been like either none or 1 pass attempts of over 20 yards. Like just That is such a losing recipe. Very disappointing how Brian Dable in certain situations punted the ball away. Look, you weren't going to win this. Like, no matter what was done, you were losing this game, right? Don't get me wrong. But certain situations where you just where you're punting it away like 4th and 3 at midfield down by like 11, it's crazy. And it shows a total lack of confidence in the offense, which again, he might be right about, but still. Darius Slayton 3 for 26 on 4 targets. Theo Johnson makes his first, one reception, as a rookie. So, 1 catch, 18 yards. But yeah, again, not a whole lot to speak of. Jalen Hyatt was targeted once, no catches. Just bad. And as far as the Giants, only 1 sack, Dexter Lawrence early in the game. And you had a Drew Phillips fumble forced and recovered by, I believe it was Bobby Okereke. Yeah. So, again, just really, really bad. Andrew Van Ginkel was the one that got the pick 6 for the Vikings. And the weird thing about him is he was on the Dolphins last year. He was the one that was involved in Daniel Jones' neck, the neck injury against Josh Azudu was the one that I think let him go. And so weird how now Van Ginkel on the Vikings is able to, give Jones further nightmares, if you will. And then the other interception was made by Harrison Smith in the end zone. So let's just kind of go into some things. Again, yeah, I think I covered a lot of just the talking points and some of the roster stuff. But, and we're going to try to breathe. This is just ugly. It's just so, again, I can't say enough how sad it is being a Giant fan these days. And I'm very, very fortunate for those Super Bowl wins and a lot of success that was. Because, again, really since 2013, you are looking at one of the poorest franchises in the National Football League and a very proud organization that is really one of the flagship franchises in the league. And it's just, I don't think that this is going to get a whole lot better. I really think the Giants are going to be a team that struggles for many more years. I hope I'm wrong, but I just, that's what I think. But Giants, that first drive could not have been any uglier. You get a negative 6-yard play to Devin Singletary on a passing play, a delay of game, incomplete to Theo Johnson. It was like as bad a first, possession as you could ask for. And so they punted away. But the good thing is the defense steps up. And what happens is on a 3rd down, 3rd and 16 at their own 9, really the Vikings are looking to kind of just punt it away. C.J. Ham, the fullback, fumbles on a nice play. Drew Phillips is the one that causes it. And Okereke recovers it at the 21. So this is the spot, if you're to equate this opener to last year, it's like when the Giants were moving the ball against Dallas in that first drive, and it's like, all right, what's going to happen? Can you take a not commanding lead, but hey, get on the board, take a 7-0 lead. That doesn't happen. They go 7 plays, 15 yards. It takes up 4 minutes. And they actually do get a first down. It ends up in a first and goal at the 10 situation, and nothing happens. I mean, Singletary 4-yard run, Jones with a 1-yard run, and then a no gain Jones sack technically, and Gano settled for a 23-yard field goal. So Graham Gano returns from he had been hurt obviously like the second half of last year. So it's 3-0 Giants, and then let's talk about a couple of key plays. You actually have a 1st and 20 for the Vikings after a holding penalty on Minnesota. And they're able to chip away a little bit to put them in a situation of 3rd and 8 at their own 37 and a really big penalty. It ends up being like a 36-yard defensive pass interference penalty on Adoree Jackson. And I actually didn't think it was a bullshit call. Like, I know a lot of people were upset about it. And hey, like, entitled to. And it's not, and I'm not blaming Adoree. It was terribly underthrown by Darnold. And it ends up kind of looking bad because, Adoree's kind of going into Jordan Addison. I could see why the ref called it. I'll put it that way. But I also understand the fans' frustration. But to me, I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse. I don't know. I guess I personally felt like that call was fair. If I'm trying to be as objective as I can be. But that's a really big call right there. I think that's part of the frustration. That's because you're going from the Vikings potentially punting. You almost were in a situation where the Giants would have had the ball back with a lead. We never saw that as what ends. It's quick. It's a quick strike situation. Josh Oliver, 22-yard catch to the Giant 5, and eventually Aaron Jones punches it in from the 3. 3-yard touchdown. Aaron Jones makes it 7-3. And as the first quarter kind of moves along, there is a first down completion from Jones to Wan'Dale Robinson, just a 5-yard play. And then a really nice 3rd and 10, really probably one of the nicer plays of the game. Jones to Malik Neighbors. Good protection, shotgun situation, and they find Neighbors to get it into Viking territory. But then the Giants kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit. Too many men on the field. False start on Jermaine Illuminor. We go into the second quarter. And then an offensive holding penalty on Wan'Dale Robinson. So just really, really poor play, which leads to a punt, 4th and 15 at the 40. But actually, a really nice punt by Jamie Gillen. A good job by the special teams there to hold it at the 1 yard. They actually down it at the 1. But what do the Vikings do? They drive 13 plays, 99 yards in 6 minutes and 44 seconds. And some of the big plays, Ty Chandler, 10-yard catch to put it from the 2 to the 12. And then really the biggest one, 2nd and 12 at the 10, Darnold to Justin Jefferson for 44 yards, gets past Deontay Banks. That really was really, really big. And Darnold to Addison for 16, Darnold to Addison for 13. And eventually, it's a 3rd and 8 at the 9, and Darnold to Addison for 6. 4th and 2 at the 3. Vikings go for it, and it's a touchdown, Justin Jefferson. Really bad job by the defensive line to not get it on Darnold. And so Jefferson makes a little move on Banks. Touchdown, 14-3 Vikings. Second quarter, we're kind of halfway through it at this point. And Giants get a first down. Jones to Slayton for 8 yards. And the Giants end up getting it to about midfield. What ends up happening, and again, some poor play calling. 4th and 3 at the 49, down 14-3 with 3:30 left in the second quarter. And they punt. I'm sorry, that's crazy to me that Dable would not go for it. They punt. It's not a great punt anyway, and so the Vikings start at their 15. They would punt it away, Minnesota, after getting a first down. And eventually, not much. This is where Darius Slayton muffs the punt, but the Giants recover it. And there was a not necessary penalty anyway on Ivan Pace. Pace was the one who talked a lot of shit about the Giants going in, and boy, was he right. That's the sad thing is these teams go into MetLife Stadium with so much confidence and bravado, and the Giants just they prove them right. They prove them right. It's really sad. There's just, with that, to me, that's like a lack of backbone, a lack of fight, right? It's one thing to lack talent, but like to let someone else come into your building, talk a bunch of shit, and then basically just dominate you is just pathetic. So, anyway, the Giants, not much else to talk about. Giants are, in the Daniel Jones era, it feels like that 2-minute drill, like nothing really ever happens. Obviously I'm exaggerating, but it just hasn't been great. So, yeah, there's a sack in the mix there. Just nothing great. Let's go to the second half. 14-3. And things are not, and look, Giant fans, they boo them off the field. The vibes are bad to begin with. And then it just doesn't get any better. 3rd and 16 at the Viking 24. Vikings had the ball coming out of the half. And what should have been an easy punt situation, it was a 9-yard completion for Darnold to Johnny Munn. Kayvon Thibodeau face mask. Inexplicable. Kayvon Thibodeau, who I didn't notice basically all game, but I noticed him there, taking a really, really selfish, stupid penalty. You just cannot have that. Like that's inexcusable shit right there. So that extends the drive and actually puts the Vikings at that point now at around midfield. And what do? You get a Jones 12-yard run, 19-yard run, and then a 21-yard pass from Darnold to Naylor. And this is a play where Cordell Flott just bites on the pump fake, and Naylor's wide open. Just a terrible sequence, and it all started with the Thibodeau play. So as bad as it all was, you could have gotten the ball back down 14-3 with a lot of time to go. It's 21-3. Then the Giants kind of have a somewhat of an ugly drive that leads to a field goal. It's a Malik Neighbors 25-yard reception. Again, he's the means of your offense, with Wan'Dale Robinson supplementing him as well. And you have a pretty big penalty on Van Roten, offensive holding. There was a sack as well. Jones gets sacked. And then you get a 15-yard catch, Jones to Robinson, to put the Giants back into field goal range. Graham Gano hits the 50-yard field goal, makes it 21-6. The Vikings then do go 3 and out. Was it 3 and out? 3 and out. And then Giants have the ball 1st and 10 at their own 17, and this would be the dagger. And this was the formation was so obvious as to who they were going to, which was Wan'Dale Robinson. Andrew Van Ginkel reads that, and he picks off Daniel Jones for a pick 6. So just when you think it couldn't get any worse, that was the cherry on top. 28-6 Vikings with that Van Ginkel defensive touchdown. That would be your final score. Giants would go 3 and out after that drive. Then actually you get the Darius Moasow interception on a tip ball. This was Dexter. And again, Dexter Lawrence was, as you'd expect, the most consistent of the bunch defensively. And he gets in there, wreaks some havoc. And the 6th-round rookie Moasow is able to haul in that interception. It's good for him. That makes it still down 28-6. We go from the third quarter to the fourth quarter. And in that situation, Giants are driving the ball again. The game is basically out of reach, but they have a situation to maybe do something. And Daniel Jones on a 4th and 8 from the Viking 11 throws an interception in the end zone. Harrison Smith intercepts that. And then from there, not a whole lot to discuss. The Vikings would have a 6-play drive that ends in a punt. The Giants would have a 12-play, 60-yard drive that ends up with them turning it over on downs. Theo Johnson, he gets his first catch on that drive. Again, Giants actually got the ball at times with, into decent positions, and they just couldn't do anything with it. And it ends up, like I said, with the Giants turning it over on downs. They got it to the Viking 8, and that's pretty much your ball game. Nothing else to discuss. Vikings win 28-6 in one of the most embarrassing performances of the Week 1 slate. Right? I mean, Carolina gets absolutely obliterated by their division rival, the Saints. And so that, of course, is up there. And, there's different ways to consider different games, but the Giants, in terms of power rankings, they are going to be absolutely one of the lowest teams on there, and you can't really fight it. I mean, it's absolutely deserved. And it's just, again, it's a really bad time for the Giants. And next week, it's a make or break game for the season. I really, really feel that way. And I kind of had mixed feelings as far as I want the Giants to win because obviously I'm a Giant fan and I want the season to be somewhat interesting. On the flip side, though, it actually reminds me a little bit in some ways, but expectations were different, of Giants at Arizona Week 2 last year, where in my mind I'm thinking, well, it's probably in their best benefit to lose, considering that the Commanders are going to be a team now. I know they already got Jaden Daniels, so they're not on the QB hunt, which is an important delineation. But it's like that might be one of the teams that's also low in the standings. And losing is probably in your best interest. I know I sound like a broken record if you've heard me in recent seasons. And look, again, I would like the Giants to win. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we're being realistic, is it probably better if they lose in the long run? Yeah. But it's only Week 2, so it's crazy talk. But it's just that this Viking loss just so demoralizing. It's embarrassing. Ugly and disgraceful, quite frankly. So, yeah, Vikings go into MetLife Stadium. They win 28-6. And now the Giants will go on the road, take on one of their NFC East rivals, the least of them, over the recent course of time it'll be against the Washington Commanders. So a game, 2 teams coming in 0-1, 2 teams that got beat pretty good in Week 1. The Commanders losing at the Bucs. We'll see what happens. Washington, it's their home opener. Jaden Daniels' first game at home. And I think the hook on Daniel Jones, I think the leash is pretty short for him at this point. Expect him to get the start in Week 2. But beyond that, your guess is as good as mine. It's going to be another interesting season for the New York Giants, and I don't mean that in a good way.